Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another of our series of SkySwitch webinars. I'm Andy Abramson, Chief Marketing Officer for SkySwitch, and today we're going to be joined by not only Guy Fawkes of Telepath, one of our Club 1000 resellers, but also two other members of the SkySwitch community, Louis LeBlanc from out in Portland, Oregon, and Dan Napolitano. Welcome, guys. We're glad you're all here, guys included. Guy, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Today's webinar is going to be a lot of fun. We're going to talk about Guy's success a little bit with SkySwitch for his company Telepath, but we're really going to drill down to something that I feel is a must-have for all resellers. And having known Guy over the past year and getting to meet him and his lovely wife at Vectors back in October, and getting to know more of the resellers and talking to resellers and hearing some of the hurdles and challenges that all resellers face, not only with SkySwitch, but with any telecommunications company, with almost any technology company. What Guy has done with Glance is really solved a problem. And one of the things we always say in marketing is there's nothing like having a solution in search of a problem, but it's much better to have a problem where you have a known solution. And Glance provides that in multitude directions. So we're going to talk about that. We are going to also have questions that you can open up. We'll open up the question and answer sessions. Use the Q&A, not the chat, as always. It's real important. That way, Guy can really answer those questions for you. He and Cindy are well loved by all of us at SkySwitch. Jason, Eric, Frank, all of us. So we're always happy when Guy's able to help us out because he's also a neighbor. You know, we're in Tampa, he's over in Clearwater. So it's easy to get to know somebody who's in the backyard. We're going to talk about that. We'll also have some great SkySwitch and Glance swag for you. At the end, people ask us questions. The rules are very simple. Those of you who ask questions have a better chance of winning the swag because Emily and Erica, who work through how we choose our winners, we always look first for the people who have never asked questions. And if you ask a question, you have a better chance of getting some of this great SkySwitch and now Glance swag from this week's webinar. So with that, I want to, again, welcome Guy here and say, Guy, why don't you give us some background on Telepath and tell us all about, your company, and you've been working with SkySwitch for a while and what it's been like.
Sure. Well, so we got started back, or I should say I got started before my wife was a part of it in 2004. I was working for a wireless ISP in the area, knocking on doors for a living, trying to sell against the cable company and the incumbent. And it's funny how you need something in your life to kind of push you to the next step. I had already had a little bit of a background in IT, having worked at a small computer store for a period of time where I lived in Atlanta, and moving back to Florida, which was kind of my home area. I had this job and I asked to get off one day early. I think it was on a Wednesday, and I said, hey, next Friday I want to head to Orlando. I've got something going on over there. I'd like to get out a little bit early. And my boss looked at me and pounded his fist on the desk and said almost verbatim, I own you until 5 p.m. And so what he didn't know was he launched my career at that moment. It took me about 30 days to get out of there, and started a company at the time was called Networks Technology Solutions. And, instead of knocking on doors for someone else, I just started knocking on doors for myself. It moved along pretty quick. Within a month, I had more work than I could handle. A few years later, one of my clients asked me about voice over IP, and I kind of decided that looked pretty interesting. Didn't know a lot about it, other than technology interested me. What I didn't know was that was really going to change how we did everything. I went to some training, actually signed up like a number of folks with CoreDial. Sometimes I cringe even when I say that name, but it was a difficult first few years in VoIP. It was good from the perspective that I learned it the hard way. And when you learn things the hard way, I think you learn them better and it sticks better. But for a period of time, it was pretty rough sailing. A number of us resellers moved over together, met SkySwitch. In fact, I think it was Louis LeBlanc, who's on the call with us, that said, hey, I found one more company that we should talk to. And there was a group of us that were kind of interviewing other white label providers. And he had run across SkySwitch, and they were the last one. We had already made a decision to go elsewhere. And I think at the last minute, we went, this looks better. And so that was around 2015, I believe. And a bunch of us kind of moved over and signed up. And honestly, I'm biased, but I think it's been great ever since. And I'll have people call me and ask me what I think of SkySwitch. I always say, well, I got to let you know I'm biased, but they earned it. And so today we're actually cover the Tampa market. Probably about 80% of our clients are based in this area, but we do have some folks around in other areas. I've got people as far away as Oregon, as far north as Toronto. And I say people, I mean clients and endpoints. And we've even got a couple of endpoints in the Philippines that are in call centers where they're doing tech support for folks here in the US. So we really don't care where people are. That's the great thing about being in VoIP and why I love it. You can ship phones to them. I do prefer to have the personal touch and be able to show up and set the phones up and train them, but sometimes you can't do that. And you can ship a phone off and it still works great.
Guy,
So
yeah,
go ahead.
You've made extensive use of the SkySwitch API,
Mm-hmm.
and you've created a few apps using it, both internal use and
Mm-hmm.
I think for even some of your clients. You want to talk a little bit about your API experience with us?
Yeah. So, honestly, I kind of stumbled upon that. It was a bit of an accident, and I may say that again, but it really was. Made a promise to a client and wasn't able to really fulfill it. And I spoke with Eric, and he said, hey, why don't you just use the API and do that? And I'm not a programmer. I had a young technician working for me who had some programming skills. And I talked to him. I'm like, you think you could do this? I mean, we got the API, SkySwitch set it up for us. And we're able to put something together in pretty quick order. I mean, I think within 24 hours, we had a little working prototype that we ended up using. Since that, I've created some stuff that uses the XML browser in a Yeeling phone that's allowed us to do a few things. We had before some of the recent updates to the, what do you call that? Just drawing a blank, but you're inside of NetSapiens, they've given us the button builder and shared contacts and things. Well, there was a time when that was really hard to do. Well, we use the API to create a contact manager for our clients that synced with the phones. Never made that public, but that was a great tool for us for a number of years that we really loved. So the API has definitely been something that's helpful, and really just kind of stumbled across it.
That's super. You want to let's transition, because the API is one of the things that it helped you build Glance. But let's talk about, especially for the resellers who are on the call, and we've got close to 40 people taking part already, and we're going to have many more listening to the recording as part of Webinar Rewind when we post it a day or so after today. Why don't we take a step back and talk just about what Glance is? And I know you're going to go through a bunch of features and benefits of it, but let's go high level. Why someone from, who's a reseller in a SkySwitch community, let's teach them what it is first, and then we'll get into why they need it.
Yeah, it's as I put on my slide here, it's a troubleshooting app. It helps me solve problems quickly. The ability to have insights faster than I think you can get in the portal. Now, I having been with another white labeler, I don't have a problem with the portal. I like it. I think it's one of the best ones out there. Having said that, sometimes you just want to get the information faster. You want it in one location. When we first were building it, and even before we made it available to anyone else, I kept saying to my technician, hey, I want to see that I should say my programmer / technician. He was also a technician, but I kept saying, hey, I want to see that at a glance. And I said that over and over and over. And that's where the name came from, because I kept saying, we're going to call this in Glance. But it was about putting things in front of me where I could come to and answer quickly about what was going on. And really it has gotten bigger than that initial feature set, what I would refer to back as Glance 1, but even Glance 1 was really helpful in helping us track things down and not have to dig through the NetSapiens Dash Manager to do it.
What do you think is one of the key aspects of data access and insight that Glance provides?
I would say one of the key things is just what's online. I can quickly jump into one of my domains and see what's online. If a customer calls and says we have a problem with the phone, sometimes clients, I mean, they're not technically savvy oftentimes, and they don't necessarily know how to describe the problem they're having. So I can be listening to them, but also pull up Glance and open up a domain and look at all the endpoints. All of us have heard someone say, nothing's working. It doesn't work, and they're very vague. And I can open up Glance and go, well, no, I can see all the phones are online. Or better yet, maybe I can see they're all offline, but they all have the same timestamp. Maybe they all went offline exactly at 1:36 p.m. Well, that gives me an insight. It isn't like one phone went offline. It's like they all did. So being able to have quick access to that lets me know, okay, we've got probably an internet issue. I mean, they're calling me, so they're not telling me the power's out. They're just saying something's not right. Well, maybe we have an internet issue. It's amazing to me that people will call us as their phone provider quicker than they'll call their ISP. If phones weren't in the picture, they would not think that, but the phone is the thing that gives up that problem the quickest. And so we'll get calls, and then as an MSP, which I really didn't say before, we're an MSP, we still service people's networks. We may look and go, hey, not only are your phones offline, but your router's down. Now I've gotten even more insight. So I think that's one of the key things that we can see is what's online, what's offline.
So you're able to see all the domain data, what's going on within each account's activity within their service, and you're able to be almost preemptive, it sounds, of problems. One of our resellers just, Jeff Cole said, we can often let our customers know their internet is down before they know it. So I think that's a key point of what you're talking about.
That's a fact.
But I think that there's more. I mean, you and I've spent a lot of time talking about this, not only in preparation for today, but in advance. There's some monetary benefits to using Glance as well.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I think that if I can solve a problem quickly, I mean, time is money. It's as simple as that. But if I can come to a resolution of a problem faster than if I have to go out and visit someone on site or something like that, there's a direct monetary benefit to doing that. Not just for me, but also for the client. A client that is down is losing money. Some businesses faster than others. Some types of customers are more flexible and they can switch to cell phones real easily or something, but other places just can't. They have to have their phones up and online.
And then you also offer some analytics, right?
Yeah, well, we do reporting. So, like I wake up every morning and I look at my offline endpoint report, and that's really helpful. It's an email that is automated. I get every morning. I think mine is set for 7 a.m. Might be 6 a.m. I forget. It's just, it pops in and I look at it and I can see what endpoints are offline. And I'll show that here in a little while, just a little screenshot of that, but it's very helpful to see that. Even things like reports on 911. I get a weekly report on 911 to see what it needs attention. Have I added a new customer and someone in the office forgot to set up their 911? So certainly there's some good information in there.
What about things like SIP ALG or client voicemail pins or things like that? Those sound like regular
mundane little things,
regular pain points for everybody that really take up a lot of time and really are distractions to the customer as well as the reseller. So what about those two?
Yeah, well, to use the voicemail pin as an example, I had a pharmacist call me the other day and he said, I can't remember my pin. and I need to change it. I mean, two things in one call. I mean, or two needs. One was, what's my PIN? So I was able to pull Glance up and quickly see the PIN. I didn't need, now, of course we can change the PIN inside of the Dash Manager, but I want to see what it is. And at that point he said, well, will you change it? And right in the same place I looked at it, I updated his voicemail PIN to what he wanted. So originally I viewed it because I was out on the road and I said, hey, I can change it later, but here's what it is. A little while later, I got back to the office when I had more time, and I was able to easily, through the same interface, just change it once he told me what he wanted it to be. So it's a quick little thing that Glance makes very simple to do. Whether you're out on the road, you want to look at it on your smartphone, or if you're going to do it on your desktop. I tend to use Glance on my desktop. I know some other users do, but it's not the only place that it can work. SIP ALG is another one that, I mean, if you have a network with SIP ALG on it, it can come out of nowhere and just really bite you. You know, you're fighting with it and you're wondering, how come call parks aren't working? How come the lights aren't working on BLFs? Things like that. Well, how many times, I know it's happened to me, it's probably happened to some of the other folks listening that are Glance users, someone got a new modem. You know, around here, Spectrum is one of the big two internet providers. They love to put in a new modem and leave SIP ALG enabled, where it wasn't before. We might have had to configure it for their modem to not have it on, but a new one goes in, they had a problem. Suddenly it's on in the network and things are failing. And it's interesting to me that you can see it in Glance and the customer will say, oh yeah, I forgot to tell you that we got a new modem. And I've had that happen a number of times. It's like, okay, we got to get a hold of them and tell them to turn that off. And then everything goes back to normal. So that's definitely a great proactive thing that we can see in there. And by the way, Glance has a report for that you can have come in every morning showing if SIP ALG has changed its status on your endpoints.
It's so funny you bring that up because I just moved into a new community with a new cable provider, new fiber installation. And yesterday the tech came in and everything is now turned on. I've got fiber and I've got, I could launch a rocket ship with the 960 megabit connection because it's gigabit fiber. And the very first thing he says, I go, am I up? He goes, yep. I go, how do I get into your back end? And he gives me the IP address. And I went in, I turned everything off, firewall, everything that you have to turn off. So you don't have any interruptions to SIP calls. Because when I was in another house a few years ago on a short-term basis, I had a problem. I couldn't make a single call because what you're talking about, SIP ALG,
Yeah.
They also block TLS and things like that.
Yep.
And as I'm doing this, as I'm going through every screen, I'm looking at him and I'm watching his chin just drop. And I said, what's going on? He goes, I've never had a customer do that, let alone a customer who's doing it that fast. I said, well, years of experience, but knowing that what will cause a problem and heading it off before it starts. And what I'm hearing here is Glance gives every reseller that same ability that what I did yesterday on premise with my equipment, with my setup, the ability, I might not have been able to make this call today had I not turned things off because I don't know all the things
right.
they're blocking on a fiber hub, on a modem, etc. So, but what was amazing was his comment was, I'm seeing something I've never seen before. And I'm like, good, now you know better. All these things should be turned off because people are working from home. And I think now with the pandemic that we're under and more people working from home, this ability to troubleshoot SIP ALG issues is probably one of the key benefits that you have as a reseller and others can have. Let's dive into a little bit about the history of Glance. I mean, I think there's always a reason why that you have this great moment, the eureka moment, so to speak. Let's dive into the history.
So, and I alluded to this before, but really Glance came about really as an accident. I was on site, had hired a new salesman, and we went and, when you have a new salesman, they want to close a deal. And in the beginning, you got to work with them. And it wasn't a huge customer, but it was important to him. And it was, I think it was 8 or 10 phones. So we went out and had a great meeting. To this day, I know the guy, the salesman is long gone, but the customer, I still am friends with him. And we still have their business. But I think the need was we have a couple of guys working in a sales bullpen and they need to be able to call outbound, and we're going to be calling outbound to car dealerships in different cities, and we need to look like we're coming from that city. Well, no big deal. I mean, we'll just give you office manager access. You go in and change your caller ID once a day. to one of the various numbers that you own. And we bought numbers in different cities. What I didn't realize, and maybe it's even changed now, I don't know, but you can't do that. You can't, the operator level cannot get in there, or excuse me, office manager level cannot get in and change those on the fly. I could, but I didn't want to be put in that position of every day they're opening up a ticket to change, you know, these different extensions. So I called SkySwitch and spoke to him, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I literally walked out with a check in my hand, and how am I going to do this? And Eric was very nonchalant. He said, well, just use the API to do it. Like, no big deal. And I remember thinking at first, what the heck does that mean? I mean, I don't know how to do that. So I came back, talked to the technician / programmer, and we came up with a way to do that. And that, what it really did was two things. One is it solved a need right then. And so if you guys have needs, I'd love you to be a Glance user, but you may have needs that are outside of the bounds of Glance where the SkySwitch API can be utilized to solve something. But another thing it did was it just gave me that realization that, gosh, there's something else that I can do. And once you know it's out there, then it turned into, hey, you know, can we do this? And I remember the tech, well, I think so. And he started really learning about the API and determining how to read through it and how to ask questions of it and get answers back. And that's kind of what happened. You know, it just started growing in our office that way. We actually built a few different things. At some point, and I don't know, maybe there's someone on this call that can remind me of it, but at some point it got out of here and it went to some resellers. And I decided this is pretty neat. People are liking this. I do remember our first vectors. It was in St. Pete, I believe. And I remember I got to meet Lewis in person. We had talked many times on the phone, but met him in person. And we're sitting there and he had his laptop open. Now, it was in my hometown. I wasn't under a lot of stress. I had a technician, but Lewis had flown across the country to be at this thing, and he still had all of his clients back, and he was concerned, you know, are they being taken care of? And he showed me his laptop, and he had Glance open. And he went through most of the Vectors seminar with Glance running. And I don't know how long it had been in production at that point. Maybe we had it out for, you know, 4 or 5 months, something like that. But it struck me that, wow, I'm not the only one relying on this. And it kind of grew from there. So it lasted this kind of Glance version 1 for a number of years. And then right around Vectors this year, we had a goal to get out version 2. We missed it a little bit. We added some neat features into the version 1 in time for, I think, Vectors. But shortly thereafter, a couple of months later, we came out with version 2, which is, I'm going to show you some screenshots of that today.
That's great. I mean, Guy, the whole thing here is you've been rolling it out. You shared it with other resellers. You made a commercial release of this 3 years ago. Mm-hmm. So I think everyone needs to understand this isn't some beta product that you're just trying to get some people to try, some resellers to try. It's been live. It's battle tested. It's a solid piece of software.
Yeah, we've got a lot of people that use it now. And I mean, you know, like any software, it's not perfect. We have issues here and there, but we're quick to resolve things. I mean, I get with the developers right away. If someone can show me something and we ask people, hey, send me a screenshot. Tell me what's happening. What are you seeing? Because I may not be seeing it. But we really work to making it work right.
Good. So I really, you know, I think that when software is at a point of 3 years old and it's mature, it's actually, you know, been able to be used. You've got people giving feedback. I'm seeing some comments in the Q&A. And remember, people, if you're going to send a question in, don't use the chat, use the Q&A. And that way we're able to look at all the questions and prioritize them, but also weave them into the discussion sometimes, like I did earlier with Mr. Cole's comment. I have a 5-year-old son, and one of the things that I've always learned that 5-year-olds love to ask is why. It's not what do I need? It's not how do I do it? It's always why, daddy, why, daddy, why, daddy. Yeah. So, you know, and I think though, as I think back to all my years of communication, when you solve the why in people's minds, they really start to see how it impacts them. So why Glance?
Well, you know, I feel like the Dash Manager, it's very basic. I mean, and I don't mean that in a bad way. It has the information, but it's kind of the same information everybody. I could use Glance to get to that information faster and in a better way. I was able to see a lot more of it where I needed it instead of going through different pages. If I want to know, about all the dialing permissions of everybody, it's easy for me to see that inside of Glance. We've got a couple of different modules that make that possible, but I can get to those points a lot faster. One of the things I hated was trying to use the Dash Manager on my cell phone. Now, I'm a user of a little smaller cell phone. I mean, I don't have one of the bigger ones. I use an iPhone, but I can still use it on my phone. The Dash Manager was just not really designed to work well on a phone, and you're zooming in and out just to try and see things. I wanted to not have to do that. I really wanted to be able to solve problems quickly. One of the things that happened to me, and this is, I mean, I laugh at it today, but I had an elderly lady that was a customer, and her phone wasn't ringing on inbound calls. And, bless her heart, as they say in the South, she just couldn't explain what was happening very well. Glance will let me know that today, but I drove across town to fix a do not disturb issue. She just hit the button and didn't realize what was going on. So I was able to resolve that, or today I'm able to resolve that much faster. I had to get burned on it once or twice to go, hey, can we add that into Glance? And that actually was something that, it isn't in the portal. It doesn't necessarily show you that as easy. I think maybe you can look under dialing rules today, but gosh, when it started years ago, that would be something like digging a needle out of a haystack versus Glance that just showed it to you right away. We put it right where it was obvious. The biggest thing overall, I think, is not wanting to go somewhere. Now today that's important because people don't want us coming necessarily. But sometimes you don't want to go because there's a cost associated with it. And so Glance is cheaper than rolling a truck. Simple as that.
Well, that's a big point. We're going to really dive into that whole aspect of truck roll. As a matter of fact, why don't we jump into that right now? Because we all know that a truck roll costs money, but a truck roll is a lot more than just money to both the reseller as well as their customer. And when we were going over what you're going to be talking about, this point really hit home. So why don't we go into the autopsy around the truck roll, so to speak?
Yeah, I think that everyone has got their own idea of what a truck roll costs. And certainly in some communities, it may be more expensive than others. I mean, if you're in a very rural area and you've got a guy that's got to drive 20 minutes to get somewhere, and Florida's pretty spread out. I mean, I don't want to have to drive more than about 10 minutes, but sometimes I've got to go 30, 40 minutes away or send a technician. There's an associated cost. I mean, if some folks use their own vehicles, some have service trucks. If you've got trucks, you're paying for the maintenance and everything on that. You're paying for fuel. If I send out a technician, he drives his own car, I'm paying him for mileage on that. It's something that you and I were talking about before, Andy, is that, and something that I a lot of times gloss over is, what's the cost to my customer? If they're down for a long time, I mean, if they're waiting on me for an hour over something silly, there's a cost associated with that. It isn't my direct cost, but it does cost me in reputation. If I can't resolve something quickly, they aren't going to be as likely to stay with me. If I can knock it out fast, and that's one of our goals. I mean, I learned this early on in my IT career years ago. I worked for a guy, and if you brought a computer into his shop, it was going to be out the next day. It didn't matter what it was. The Best Buys of the world existed then, and they would hold on to things for 4 or 5 days. So I just came into the IT business with this feeling of, if it comes in today, try and get it out today. Let's turn things around really fast. And I do that with VoIP problems too. I don't like people to wait. Even if it's one phone out of 20, I just don't want them to feel like I'm not responsive. So if I can solve it, and oftentimes Glance helps me solve things faster, that's what I want to do. I'd be interested in knowing what folks think a truck roll costs. I guess it does depend on where you are, but for me, I've thought through it. It's at least $100. And there's also the associated time with whether it's myself out and now I can't do sales, or if I send a technician out and now he's not in here handling the technical side. where I'm taking calls that I really shouldn't be taking, there's costs associated with all of those.
So there's technician time, there's customer time. There's also, we were talking about, you're talking about the car driving, there's mileage on the vehicle. There's the wear and tear. But Guy, I think those are the imputed costs. Those are the monetary costs that you're going to have because, lost time, a technician promised to do something for somebody on a certain day, and now it's pushed back a little bit. So you have, but what about things like reputational risk, long-term satisfaction, dissatisfaction? How does all that play into the cost of a truck roll?
Well, it really plays in if they're waiting on you. If you can avoid the truck roll altogether, your reputation simply goes up. If I can find a problem, and I'm not just saying this, I'm a Glance user. I mean, obviously I'm biased, but I'm a Glance user and I do use it to solve problems. You get calls from people who say things like, I can't park calls anymore. Here's a great example of something that Glance can help me where I would have not known how to fix this before. Today, I have a simple solution for it. But I've had cases where something happens at a data center and phones will roll over to another data center. When that happens, they don't always roll back right away. So I remember I have a company that is a national seed company. They sell seeds for your lawn and golf courses, all kinds of stuff all over the U.S. And they're like, if we put a call on park, these two girls up front can't pick them up. Well, what had happened was those two phones just didn't roll back over. So I use Glance to look at the node that they are registered to. Now I can see. It's funny, I was doing a training with someone last week, and I said, okay, where are your phones registered? And they told me. And interestingly enough, once we got a Glance, not a single one was registered there. And they went, well, I thought we were there. They were in a different data center. I think they were scheduled to move, but the fact is they were in a data center that they weren't aware of. Glance made it obvious in about 2 seconds. In fact, I went, well, let's check a few more domains. Let's just make sure that these phones aren't hung up somewhere. And in fact, they weren't. So that's a little thing that's very helpful.
Great. Well, there's a lot more to Glance than just saving money on a truck roll or saving reputational risk, long-term satisfaction that a reseller's customer can have, or dissatisfaction with a reseller. And all know, I don't think I have to tell you, a dissatisfied customer today is someone who's looking tomorrow to leave you. And if Glance helps you with customer retention, it's always cheaper to keep a customer than to find a new one.
Yeah, no doubt.
So making an investment in Glance, and Guy, you haven't even said what does Glance cost a month?
We're going to get to that at the end.
Oh, come on. Let's not keep everybody waiting.
Okay. It's cheaper than a truck roll. Glance is $99 a month.
So for $99, the first truck roll I don't do.
Yeah.
Here's
the thing our goal should be to have 0 truck rolls. Now that may not be possible, and Glance isn't going to fix everything, and it doesn't for me, but it fixes a heck of a lot of stuff. It helps me get things resolved a lot quicker. So if I would normally go out on site, maybe, I don't know, twice a week, if I can get that down to, twice a month, it's paying for itself. It absolutely will pay for itself, regardless of what. I could triple the price of Glance and it would still be covered.
I think you just said something really meaningful. It's no truck rolls. Eliminate the truck roll. Kill the truck roll. Eliminate no more truck rolls. Anything you want to say like that is a big benefit to every reseller, especially today. I mean, think about it. If you don't have to send a technician out, that's less exposure risk in a pandemic environment.
That's correct. Yeah, I have a friend who had a technician at a site, and someone at the site, a rather large site, someone tested positive for COVID, and suddenly it altered his business because they had to let him know. And then the employee was worried. If you can avoid sending people out, it's probably better.
And that's a big part of this whole, what does a truck roll cost? Because what does it mean to lose one of your technicians? Maybe you only have one technician. If they've got to self-quarantine for 14 days because they were in an environment where somebody may have had it, it reminds me of the days where, you use your credit card somewhere. You don't know if your credit card was hacked, but the credit card company said you may have been exposed because the terminal your credit card was swiped at was reported to have been part of a money scam. And so we're suspending your credit card until we get you a new one. You go, why? It's fine. My card's safe. So it's the same thing. It's the exact same thing. Let's dive into some of the real features of Glance so that everyone can look at it, because no one problem affects every single person. And
Agreed.
I think if you go through some of these features, they're going to say, gee, I could be using that because. So let's go into the first one.
Absolutely. So one thing I want to point out here real quick, you're going to see, I'm going to go through kind of step by step of what Glance does. You're going to see I have had to pixelate out some of this information. This is live data. People ask me, why don't you do a live demo? Because it's my clients or it's someone else's clients, and we want to be respectful of their names and phone numbers and things like that. So I apologize for the pixelation here. Someone told me yesterday, hey, it looks blurry. Well, that's all it is we're just trying to hide information, but you can imagine what's in there. If you're in the business, you know what we've got. First, we give you a list of all of your domains. If you've got a bunch of domains, they're very easy to display. You can search them by keyword. You can pull them up really quickly. In each domain, you can edit it and you can put in some key information. We collect information like what's a telephone number for a technician. Now, when I say technician, I mean somebody on site. If a site is down, you may want to have a number in Glance, because when your report comes out that you might be viewing on your iPhone or whatever, you can actually click the dial. It will put that phone number into the report next to the customer's name. So you can very easily get to someone. We get a first and a last name for your main contact, the person who maybe handles your billing or is in charge of the account, and also their email address. And we use that because Glance has, and we'll hit this in a little bit, but Glance has a personalized feature here. Well, it will email the customers on a recurring basis what their extensions and associated physical addresses are. And this is important, especially right now when people are taking phones home. It can email them with some boilerplate text that's customizable to say, hey, here's a list of all of your extensions and addresses. If these are not correct, please let us know immediately. You can, within that, you can also hide domains. Maybe you don't want some smaller players to even show up on your report. They're just maybe one or two phones. It's easy to hide them, and you can see in my screenshot here, I've got a couple that are hidden. Those are ones that I don't worry about tracking like I might with a bigger customer. And also we've got a HIPAA field there, and that's just to hide information from one of our other modules so that if a technician is viewing it, you can know that you're compliant with HIPAA laws about hiding customers' names or callers' names and phone numbers. And I want to point out that was the HIPAA compliance thing was a Glance user's suggestion of something that we needed to change. Moving on from domains is what we call endpoint control. This is kind of the heart of Glance and what was really used so much in version 1 of Glance. But here we can see a list of all of our endpoints showing us everything is online. In this particular screenshot, I don't have any offline phones, but I can see the phone's online. I can see their extension. I can see the person's name, and I can see, you can see there it says ATL. Those are that's the node that the phones are registered to. Up at the top, I've got an overview also of, the active calls going on. Do I have some endpoints that are offline? And it says 6 of them are offline. They're just down below the screenshot, and other helpful information. I can also click on any one of those or show them all at one time, but this digs into a phone or into an endpoint, and I can see, again, who is it? I can see that it's registered. I can see the WAN IP address and the LAN IP address. So if you're an MSP, like I am, that internal IP address is really helpful for me. I may jump into a machine that I have remote access to, and I can quickly get to that phone to log into it if I need to see something or do something manual on the phone. I can see the MAC address, the make and the model, and the firmware. One of the resellers that uses Glance suggested that we add notes to it because he wanted to be able to put notes in. So it's interesting, we added that, and I saw him at Vectors last year, and I said, hey, that thing you asked for, it's there now. So that's handy. And of course, you can see VM pin in the bottom left corner of the screenshot. I can click the little eyeball, and it will show me what the pin is. I can edit it and save it, and it'll update the PIN. Moving on to the next module is offline endpoints. So here I have a domain selected. I can also run, it isn't evident here, but there's a way to see every single offline endpoint in your enterprise at that moment. Takes a few moments to pull up. It's going to go through all of your domains and it will show you who's offline. Right here, this is just one domain. So Glance version 1, you had to see them all at one time. Glance version 2, you can pick any domain you want and you can look. Now here, I use this screenshot because I actually caught this one pretty early one morning, and you can see all those phones are offline. Well, it turned out they had an internet outage. So I was able to get with the IT director of the bank and shoot him a message and say, hey, do you see that your phones are all offline at this branch? And he answered me back. He knew what it was, but I gave him a heads up on that. Now, I'm going to take a minute here and just point something out. This is kind of a neat thing. Some of you have heard this story, but I take care of an air conditioning company. They take care of my air conditioning. I take care of their phones and their IT. And I noticed one day in my morning report, this can come to you every morning. And again, mine comes in at 6 or 7 a.m. And I look through the list every day. Well, I noticed that the air conditioning company, 3 days in 1 week, it was offline. So he's an early riser. I shot him a text on the first morning and I said, hey, it looks like everything's offline. What clued me into that wasn't my monitoring his router. It was my monitoring his phones via Glance. This happened 3 different days in 1 week. Well, a week or two later, I went in, they resolved the problem. They actually were losing power and their generator switch wasn't working right and they weren't kicking over. Well, a week or two later, I went in and I had to pay a bill. And it was a couple $100. He waived the bill on the spot and he said something almost exactly like, brother, you don't owe me a penny. He says, you know, you have called me 3 times the last week before I ever got here to let me know what I was walking into. And that is exactly what happened. He wrote the bill off right there and I didn't pay it. So I think that's great as far as that ability to recognize this right away. Okay, I'm going to move on here. We're going to jump down to SIP ALG. Excuse me. Before we do that, we're going to look at the offline endpoint reporting. So here's a module here that is in the calendar feature, and you can just simply go in and you can set when you want these to come in. So I've got it set for 6 a.m. and 2 p.m. It goes to me and my technician, and then you can even add additional recipients, maybe your ticketing system. Some of you guys have got bigger enterprises than I do. You can, and I've heard people tell me this, they'll put someone in, assign them that, hey, when this ticket comes in, this is your responsibility every day to check this report.
What this report,
Mm-hmm.
because you mentioned it earlier and I was thinking about it. You talked about the report, but you didn't talk about what you do with it. And reports are great for, like, for example,
Sure.
when I look at email, when I do email newsletters or we do email campaigns, I look at the bounce list. I look at the unsubscribe list. And then I'm able to take action. Like if I see somebody bounce,
Yeah.
maybe they change jobs, and I'll go to LinkedIn and look and see, oh yeah, it turns out Guy's no longer with Telepath. He's now with so-and-so. Okay, I need to reach out to him there. On the unsubscribe list, I might say to somebody, gee, why'd you unsubscribe? I have one friend who gets my daily newsletter. Well, his company, for some reason, automatically unsubscribes him from newsletters. And he goes, Andy, I love getting your daily newsletter. I don't know why it stopped coming. Well, I keep adding him and he keeps getting deleted. So it's starting to reveal things that his company has some security measures in place. But what do you do with these reports?
So
you get up at 7 o'clock in the morning, you look at it and go, oh, that's nice, and you go out and do your run, or do you actually take action?
Yeah, actually, most days I do exactly what you said. I look at it, I go, okay, there's no problems there, and I go out for my run. But there are days when I don't. There's days when I see that there's phones offline. So this is a screenshot of my email that comes in, and a lot of guys get this email at different times of the day, but this is one here, and I can look and see that, I've got the copier room, the phone has been unregistered for 8 days. Now, I don't call on every single phone that's offline because there's different reasons, but I do follow up on certain ones. I left this one here. I've got a company, and you can see there's a lot of phones that are offline for a large number of days. This is crazy, but multiple sites, and they order phones for a site, and we shipped them, and they never plugged them in. But they always pay the bill. So I don't get overly excited about it. They always pay the bill. So in this case, I have this hidden from my normal reporting because I know I've talked to them before, and they're not concerned about it. But if I came in, or if I got this one morning and I saw that phones were unregistered for, 6 hours, I'll screenshot it and I'll send it. This morning, I had 5 phones from one site that were offline. I know the IT guy that handles it. I screenshotted it right out of this report and I sent it to him. And I said, hey, I think you have a site down. 30 minutes later, something rolled back in. He said, okay, thank you. They should be up now. So I actually do utilize this just for that. I'm looking for sites that are down that I can email someone and let them know before they might otherwise know. And I'm looking for things that maybe I need to be proactive on. Maybe I'm the IT guy in this case. And there's some that I have learned I can ignore that. It's not a big deal. It'll come back online.
And Guy, looking at this, you could actually do some automation around this even, and we should have a conversation about that.
Yeah, that may be the case. Yeah, absolutely.
Some easy tools like Zapier and their ability to
sure.
And text and it automatically sends a text message to that IT person saying, hey, these lines are offline, even before you wake up.
Well, I'm glad you said that. And I don't even think I have a slide on this, but one of my favorite features that was added to Glance, and I cannot state this strongly enough, is for you to give Glance to your end customer. Glance has a way to do that. I may not have a slide on it, but I do hit it at some point. But I want you to understand that Glance can be put in the end user's hand. So I referenced the bank before on one of my previous slides. The IT guy there has Glance. The guy that I alerted today that said, hey, you've got a site down, he has Glance. Is he using it? I don't know. I don't know if he's looking at it, but I know I am, and I still will let him know. But the fact is he could pull it up and look.
That's great. What are some of the other cool features?
So SIP ALG detection is a big one. And here's another report. I call this the live report. Anything in the portal I'll call live, but there's also an associated email that can go out every morning. Some folks love that. It's easy to just put in, what time of day you want this to come in. What you're seeing here, and again, the text is blurred a bit, but when the LAN IP and the WAN IP match each other, that is an indication of one of two things. The most common is SIP ALG. The second thing that it can be is that someone has put your phones on the public internet. I've had both happen. If your phones get on the public internet, they're probably going to get hacked pretty quickly. And luckily, SkySwitch's fraud detection is pretty quick at catching that. But I did I shipped some phones up to a place in North Florida. The very first things they plugged in was the telephones into the PoE switch, and the router was misconfigured, and it was pushing it was putting the public IPs on the switch. So the first 5 phones that boot up got their block of 5 public IPs. That will show up in here. It doesn't know if it's SIP ALG or the other problem. Most likely it's SIP ALG, but it's something to keep an eye on. And that's why it's good to get this report every day.
But what that's saying to me is, if I was a reseller, an MSP, I'm being proactive. Mm-hmm. I'm ahead of. On the comments we've gotten in the Q&A and the chat, the biggest single benefit I'm hearing, other than the truck roll cost reduction, which I think is the big one, the single biggest one is you look prophetic to your customers, not pathetic, but prophetic, that you foresaw a problem, you took action, and in some cases solved it before the customer even knew. And that level of proactivity is so important today, because a mistake or a down communication process, a missed phone call because the call was offline, could be a lost piece of business.
Yeah. One thing about VoIP, it is growing at such a rate that other people are getting into the business very quickly, and they're going to be knocking on your customers' doors. And we need to make sure that they like us better than the next guy.
And there are some very big companies coming at you.
Yeah, agreed.
What else?
Let me move on. 911 reporting. This is the big thing. So especially since we've all had to move towards working from home, people will take their phones home and not tell you. Now, everyone has a different philosophy on that, but the truth is that if they take a phone home and they don't tell you and they happen to dial 911, you can have a problem on your hands. If the ambulance goes to their office and not to their house, that can be a problem. And, it's interesting that people say, well, I'll disable it. Certainly that's an option. But keep in mind that a lawyer doesn't care how you've handled it. They just want to throw mud and see what sticks. So if you're going to get a lawsuit. This is a great way to keep on top of this and trying to avoid that. So what we're looking at here is a live view of a given domain. At the very top, and I'm going to move the mouse here, at the very top, I can see their WAN IP address. Over on the right, I can see all of the 911 telephone numbers. So these are phone numbers. Again, I'm sorry for blurring them, but this is their phone numbers. This address right here is matching this phone number. If I scroll down a bit and I see the same exact address coming from a different WAN IP, I know that phone is at a different site, and it shouldn't be. So it's pretty quick to look at this and go, man, I've got 5 phones at different sites when they're only telling me that they have one location.
So all of that helps you help your customer more and more and more.
Absolutely, yeah.
What else? I mean, you get this.
So this is the 911 weekly report. This is a CSV file that comes out once a week. It gets emailed. It includes all of my customers and their endpoints. We don't look at things like Reach UC. We don't look at things like voicemail. We're only looking at an extension with a physical phone. I've got my domains. I've got the extensions, who they are, what's their E911, what is the WAN IP address, what's the address, is it a primary or secondary, and is it registered or not? This is really vital because what I use is the filter feature inside of Excel, and I can look at this spreadsheet and find different things. I can find where we've got duplicate addresses where I shouldn't. That tells me I've got phones at different places. I can look and see, it'll actually show check 911 if there's something that's not right. It looks to match an address. If it doesn't, it shows up and it says check 911. So very quick for me to identify. There's a ton of stuff you can do with this. I can even find endpoints in here that have never had a WAN IP address associated. If you've ever had maybe someone working for you that set up a bunch of voicemail boxes and left the check box for create phone or however it's worded in NetSapiens, you're paying licensing fees where maybe you don't have to. And while this report wasn't designed to find those, it does. I know when I found that feature, I called a friend of mine in the business, my mentor, Jeff Hawkins. I called him and I said, hey, grab your report and let's look for this and you tell me what you see. And he found about a dozen, he is a big enterprise, he found about a dozen phones that he had been paying licensing on that weren't real phones, and some of them for a number of years. And collectively we found out that, gosh, you can use this report to find missing, or what I should say is wasted money.
So what you're saying is glance at a glance shows phantom lines.
Yeah. Yeah, it shows where you have a phone attached that maybe has never been used. And so it's easy to go in and just make those go away.
That's amazing. I think that, if I'm a reseller and I'm saving time, the big thing here is you're saving time. What about MOS scores?
So MOS scores is real simple. I mean, you get a customer call, you say, hey, our phones aren't working well. We're hearing static on the line. Customers don't know the difference between VoIP static. I don't like the word static because it's not static like an old AM radio station, but they don't know that VoIP sound. They can't tell that from a bad phone cord. So a lot of times I'm asking them questions that if I'll go in here and I look and I see a bunch of 4.5s, I know that, okay, you're probably in pretty good shape. We probably don't have a call quality issue. Maybe we have something else going on. And so it helps me identify that. If you see this, it looks a lot like what's in the portal, and it is the same information we're pulling. But again, I wanted to put it where it was quick and easy to get to, and I could look at it for one domain right from my phone or from my desktop without having to jump into the portal. I'm going to move on here and hit one of our last modules is the vulnerability report. This is a way, it's been in since Glance version 1. I can quickly identify whose dialing permissions are set wrong. We try and keep things to US and Canada. I have been a victim of toll fraud. It cost me a lot of money. We had a client that changed their voicemail pin to, I think it was 2580. If you look at the telephone next to you, 2580 is right down the center. It's about as helpful as 1234. And someone had gotten in and they had been able to get into their voicemail, break into it, and they use that to route calls through the system. And it cost me a lot of money. Now I look for that and we flag things. If you've got 4 digits, it's going to flag it as red. You don't have to change it, but you might want to get with the person and say, hey, we need to set that password to something a little bit more secure, especially if voicemail is enabled. If there's no voicemail, it doesn't matter, but if voicemail's enabled, that's a small security risk. So that's what this is going to look for. We also look for sites that have maybe all, I forget what we call that, but where you can permit all dial permission. We don't use around here much at all. I just don't need the toll fraud. So this is very helpful for that.
Well, that's great if you can reduce fraud. Anything that's a fraud prevention technique. What about SIP trunks?
So SIP trunks, we've just implemented SIP trunks into Glance in version 2. We hope to enhance this more, but it still gives good information. It tells me the name of the trunk, whether it's registered or not. Do I have it set as a bi-directional trunk? What's the WAN IP address? What are my limits? That's pretty important. And then what are the dial permissions? All of this, and I've looked at folks that have got 30, 40 SIP trunks. It all shows up, and it's very helpful.
Do you get a report that says somebody changed things like dial permissions or someone's?
We don't, and that's a great suggestion. So things like that, people email me. I did a training the other day, and someone had 2 good ideas, and one of which I'd never heard before. I went, that's a great idea. So I ask people to send those to us, and if we can incorporate it, we will.
That's so cool.
I'm going to move on to users. This is something that when we set someone up in Glance, there's kind of the reseller user who is the highest level. He creates the user. So if you're a Glance version 1 user, or you knew that if you ever had someone quit or you'd brought a new employee, you had to open a ticket with us, or someone called me, hey, can you add someone? Or I forgot my password. I don't have to worry about that anymore. Now that's all handled at the reseller level. They can log into Glance, they can create users, change passwords. This is a little pop-out window here of when you edit one of the users that very selectively you can give them permissions. So you may have a technician who sees all of your domains, but you might not want him to be able to reboot phones or something like that. So you can turn on and off these features. If you choose, and you can see here I have customer/agent, the difference between a technician and an agent is the number of domains you select. If you set them to customer agent, then you pick 1 or more domains. So in the case of this guy, David here, he has 1 domain, and he has a Glance login, and he gets to see just the features I've given him. If I can make David, in his case, sticky to me, he isn't going to leave me. If I can do that for Glance users, I think that's a good thing. So if anybody that's using Glance will create this user level, that is going to make that customer that much more sticky when one of those other providers knocks on their door. They won't have a tool like this.
That's, again, stickiness is one of the core elements of building a good brand. And as I said earlier, it's easier to keep a customer than to get a new one.
Yeah. I'm going to wrap up here so we can get to the Q&A. I just want to say, if someone is an agent and or an end user, we've got a branding option here. You stick your logo in there and put in the information about who you are. They won't see Glance. They'll think that it's your product.
Well, that's great. What a wonderful presentation for a very wonderful service that all SkySwitch resellers should really take advantage of, especially at the $99 a month price. I want to turn to 2 of our really good reseller friends. We got Louis LeBlanc and Dan Napolitano on. Guys, the big question that has been on my mind as Guy's been taking us through an excellent presentation. And I'll start with Louis. You're out on the West Coast. And all I want to hear, and I think our resellers want to hear, what was your life like before Glance? And now what's your life like post Glance? Louis.
Hi, Andy. Thanks for having me on the call. Guy, I just want to say I'm very grateful to have been a part of Glance and how it originated. It was very interesting being a part of some of the process of helping you develop it and suggesting features, which continues today, and that's been wonderful. But before we had Glance, a lot of things the guy mentioned, we just didn't have insight. There are a lot of things that the portal has now that wasn't around even a year ago, but it's still not in a Glance format. And all of the things that Guy talked about, I use on a daily basis. I get that email report at 7 a.m. every day. I can call my clients many times at 7:50 in the morning before they open and let them know there's a problem. That has saved me tons of time, along with the voicemail pin lookups, the E91 weekly report to make sure we're there. But I'll just give you a quick kind of, you mentioned like the emotional part and being confident and be able to serve your clients. The other day, I was actually driving in the car, got a phone call from a client who's a pretty large client, receptionist, reception module, 45 BLF lights. I mean, it's crucial to their business, right? And for some reason, the module just stopped working. The phone was working, but they couldn't see BLFs. They couldn't press the button for speed dial. So I said, hang on a second. I pull over to the side of the road, call up Glance, found that phone, hit reboot, got back on the road, still on the phone with her. She's calling me from her cell phone. Her desk phone's rebooting. 2 minutes later, buttons are working again. I mean, it was so easy to do, for a customer service call. But while I was driving, to be able to do that, to pull over real quick and do it. So it's just a really useful tool. I can't live without it. I'm addicted to it. I love seeing that report in the morning, all the phones that are offline, and fixing problems before they happen. But thanks again, Guy, for putting together such a wonderful platform.
My pleasure.
And, wish you continued success with it, and I can't highly recommend it enough to everybody.
Thank you.
Dan, what about you? Everybody, no two resellers are the same. What was your pre-glance, post-glance life like?
Well, our pre-glance life was actually, I followed a very similar route to Guy. I was with a different provider before SkySwitch, so support was a big issue, and we're a fairly large MSP that brought on VoIP in 2014. So I've got 13 people on my team, and help desk was really getting killed with phone support issues. Switching to SkySwitch made a huge difference. The quality of that platform is so good that things that shouldn't have happened were no longer happening. That left us with just the true, genuine support issues, a lot of which were things like SIP ALG, E91 configurations. But one of the things that I think was the biggest thing for us is there's a few pretty experienced people on my team. I've been in this business for 20 years. You have an instinct of where a problem is going to be. You almost immediately know what SIP ALG is when it's presenting. But a lot of my less experienced techs don't have that wealth of experience that helps them target problems right away. And that's where Glance is huge for us. A beginning, an entry-level tech could spend a long time looking for a SIP ALG issue. Once we unleashed Glance to our team, everybody was an expert. I mean, they would just look at it at a glance and see, oh, here's your problem at SIP ALG, or this is an E911 configuration issue. And that really changed things for us. And, Guy had mentioned how solving problems quickly or even preemptively, it's a huge boost to your reputation with a client. A client is worried about things like their phone system. And when you can respond the way Glance enables you to respond, the client kind of relaxes. I don't have to worry about the phones because I know Hybrid Communications is worrying about my phones and they're on top of it. So it was really a game changer for us. And my guys, it's their go-to tool. If I told them you can only have one tool on your desk for phone support, what do you want it to be? It's hands down Glance.
Well, that's a what I would call a well-rounded, resounding endorsement for everybody to be using it. So thanks for those comments. We've got lots of questions and we are running long. So I'm going to quickly whip through some of these and direct them to Guy. From Demetrius Rogers, he asked 2 questions. Is Glance hosted for us, or is it a tool we need to install and host on our web servers? And he follows that up with, in terms of security, are we able to protect Glance logins with 2-factor authentication?
Yeah, it is hosted by us out in the cloud. It is not something you have to install. And in terms of security, yeah, we have a one-time password that is configurable. There was actually a slide on it, and I blew past it pretty quick because we are running long. But you can force Glance to email you a one-time password on every login or every 24 hours it resets. Plus, we're going to be adding in the next version a little bit more. I think we're going to probably work with the Google Authenticator. That's the plan right now. So definitely some changes coming to that.
So you'll do single sign-on, is what you're saying?
Yeah, and we're working towards single sign-on with SkySwitch also.
That'd be great. Question from Justin Lee. He says, I'm a small one-man shop and I've looked at your pricing. I really don't want to pay for a 10 technicians roll, do you offer a single tech price?
Yeah, we used to do our pricing a little bit different. Right now, we're just flat $99. I will tell you, it is a bargain. I'm a one-man, well, I need to be fair and say I'm a two-man shop. Really, I do have a technician that works with me, but you'll find it's very useful. Look, it's $3 a day. If it can save you a truck roll, or if it can identify problems faster, it's absolutely well worth it.
Next question came from Heath Couchman. He says, can we see this in action? I think, Guy, the answer to that is they should contact you and you'll schedule a one-on-one.
Absolutely. I do demos for people all the time. And I want to say something else on the previous question. It comes with no contract and 30 days free.
So it's a try and buy.
Yeah, try it. Sure.
Bill Smith has a comment. He says, aside from meeting Guy and Cindy at SkySwitch, he goes, Glance is the best thing I've encountered. There's another endorsement from Jeff
thank you, Bill.
Hawkins. Just a comment. I have not charged for a truck roll in 8.5 years. That is my commitment to my customers. My commitment to myself is never need a truck roll. That helps me make both commitments.
Yeah.
From Philip Casagli, Kesselangino. I'm sorry if I messed up your name. This looks amazing for phones and other single endpoints. Will this work with SIP trunks, and how well does it work?
Yeah, so SIP trunk are the way we work with SIP trunks is in its infancy. We hope to add more features, but keep in mind some of the functionality of SIP trunk is hidden on the PBX that we don't have access to. So we're utilizing NetSapiens to give us this information. So if it's in NetSapiens, we can probably get it out. In the case of SIP trunks, much of the functionality is going to be down at the client's level on their PBX, and NetSapiens is not talking to your phones there. So that's we just have an inherent limitation there.
Question from David Pedrozzani. Does Glance report on SIP ALG using SIP trunks like it does on a hosted seat?
Not today, but I'm writing that down. I'm writing that down because I think that's a great point.
Next one from Demetrius Rogers again. Is there a user or customer limit to Glance?
Not right now. I don't think we have an intention of adding one, but today there is not one.
He also asked another good question. Is there an onboarding fee, or are there any types of free trials? You mentioned a free trial. Is there any onboarding fee?
There's not.
Okay. Bill Smith
and we'll help train your staff.
Bill Smith says, and this is something you and I have talked about, Guy, would putting Glance in the SkySwitch store be beneficial?
Yeah, that is something we're working towards. We've had some delays in that area, but that is kind of the goal. If any of you have developed software, what I learned is that if this is like baking a cake and it says put in the oven 350 for 1 hour, and you find out that it needed to be in the oven 350 for 12 days, it's a real challenge developing software. I've learned that, and some of you guys know that, but we're definitely delayed in some areas, and we thought we'd be in the SkySwitch store a lot longer ago, but it's a goal.
Bill McLean says, loves that it is smartphone compatible. I get my report at 6 a.m. while still in bed and can jump on problems quickly. His last comment was $99, bargain. So that's it. And Jeff Cole says he's looking forward to single sign-on in the future. Those are all of our questions. There's probably a few more which I likely have, and we'll whip through on. What do you think is the best real-world example that saves a chunk of money to a reseller? Guy, what would be your big
I can tell you as a Glance user, mine was I paid what I refer to as the idiot tax, which is when you don't have a 911 configured properly and someone dials it and you get hit with a fine. And I have paid that, I'm embarrassed to say, probably at least 4 times, maybe 5. And I'm going to really embarrass myself by saying one time, right after we released the new 911 feature in Glance, we actually got the report, and I said, hey, look at this domain. It's been here for a year. We never configured 911 on it. And we fixed it one day. Let's just say it was a Friday. We fixed it at 9 a.m. on Friday. Well, do you know that they dialed 911 at like 7 a.m. on that same day? And we paid the fee. So that is expensive, and that is why we have the function. So I just want to encourage people, use it, pay attention to the reports. I'll tell you, I'm much more careful about paying attention to those reports today because it's a high cost if someone dials it and it's not configured.
And then I'm going to ask you the question that surrounds trepidation. It goes through all of our minds, no matter how enthusiastic we are,
Mhm.
no matter how tech savvy we are, no matter how ready we are to do something. There's always the question of, what do I do and what do I need to know to make Glance work for me?
So we have a document. I don't have it posted here, but we have a document that will email you on how to get started with Glance. There's an email address here on the screen, support@calltelepath. That's our ticketing system. If someone wants to get started, they can email us, hey, this is so-and-so, just give me good contact information. We can reply with what it takes to get Glance going. There's a little bit of configuration to do on the reseller's end, and we'll work through that with you. Once we have it up and running, then we would train you on it. So what we ask, though, is when we're training someone, if you've got 3 or 4 technicians, it takes a while to train. I mean, I try and be very thorough with it. So we'll set aside 45 minutes to an hour. Just have your guys there and make sure they're ready. We just, quite frankly, because we're also we're running a VoIP company too, so we don't have time to do train a guy today and tomorrow and the next day. We want to run through it as best as we can using your data and helping you find things.
So so what you're doing is, again, you've simplified everything that you're doing and you've made it far less complex for the user, which I think is great. I want to thank you, Guy. I want to thank Lewis and Dan again for joining us. You guys gave great endorsements for Glance. Obviously, Guy, you're partial to Glance, and Dan and Lewis are fans. But I would encourage other resellers, if you don't want to talk to Guy to find out about this, talk to Dan or Lewis first. I mean, they're no nonsense. They're not pulling any punches. They're users. They've been using it for years. They know the ins and outs of it. They probably, just like Guy, can relate to you as well. So you've got 3 sources of information to make a decision. Plus, there's 30 or 40 of you already using it. I think, Guy, right? You have 30 or 40.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
guys, resellers. So it's not like this is being used by 5 guys and it's a test mode. It's real. It's live, and every day Glance is helping other resellers in the SkySwitch community. And one of our commitments when we were at Vectors was to help educate you more about how you can do more better for your business. And I think Glance is just one more example of that. I want to thank everybody for joining us on today's SkySwitch webinar. Make sure to check your email as we reach out to the winners later today for shipping information of where you're going to get that really cool Glance and SkySwitch swag pack. And we'll also be emailing out the recording tomorrow afternoon. The webinar will be posted on the blog section of the SkySwitch website. If you enjoyed today, and I think this was another great webinar, tune in when we have our next webinar on Tuesday, August 4th at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, when we introduce you to the newest member of the SkySwitch store family. And I'm talking about Fanville. And we have that great Fanville promotion going on right now in the SkySwitch store. You can check all that out. You can earn 2,500 bonus points of Cloud Cash within our SkySwitch store for every 3 Fanville fans that you purchase, any combination of Fanville phones. And that's running through the end of August. So with Tommy Lee coming on from Fanville to join the SkySwitch team for a webinar, you'll learn more and more about the Fanville product line and what's available in the SkySwitch store that's being run so very, very, very well by our First Lady of Commerce, Kelly Osborne. Kelly's doing a great job looking after all of you. Talk about a tool that's proactive. Kelly is proactive. She hunts and tracks and keeps track of orders and products and pricing. She's doing a great job, and she's doing that job for you, our resellers. So check out the SkySwitch store, check out Fanville's line of products. Tune in on Tuesday, August 4th at 11 a.m. for another one of our great SkySwitch webinars. I'm Andy Abramson. It's been great doing this webinar today. I can't thank Emily Vasquez, our marketing manager, enough for all of her help in getting this done. But my big thanks goes to Guy for inventing something like Glance that makes everybody's life easier.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I appreciate everyone's time today.
Everybody, have a great week. Stay safe and keep glancing. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.